when it comes to startups, this is applicable to everyone, but specifically when it comes to startups, the inability to accurately forecast is the death of every startup.
Welcome to Altar of the Demo Gods. If you're wondering what advice from two experienced sales engineers sounds like, it's a little like this.
Welcome back to Altar of the Demo Gods. I'm Keith Wilson, joined by my co-host, John Morton. John, how you doing this evening?
How are you, Keith? Ahoy, hoy. I need to figure out new ways to do ahoy, hoy. I've done it slow, I've done it fast, but ahoy, hoy, Keith.
Ahoy, hoy. Ahoy, hoy, John. Ahoy, hoy. You should find out if there's ways to say it in other languages. I think ultimately it's just going to turn into a bunch of racist impressions, but maybe you can say it in different languages.
Yeah. Chat GPT, is there a different way to say ahoy, hoy?
Yeah.
Well, if that's
yeah.
it.
That sounds like a good use of AI technology.
Exactly, right? Can you give us a diagram? Can you create a meme of ahoy, hoy AI?
Yeah, AI, ChatGPT illustrates what ahoy hoy would look like as a concept. That's one of my favorites.
That's beautiful. Then combine it with Altar of the Demo Gods. Now that is a thought experiment.
There we go. If we weren't trying to actually keep people entertained and compelled, I'd probably do that right now. But we're trying to keep people entertained and tuned in somewhat. If you missed last week's episode, we talked about competitive analysis. So I talked a little bit about how trying to understand how somebody sells against you, how that can be beneficial in terms of if I know traps that are being laid for me, I can come prepared with answers for those traps already, kind of counter trap, if you will. If you haven't heard of competitive analysis before, battle cards may be your first introduction to it. And they generally do have some pretty good competitive intel in it. So if you're new to a company or you're trying to get some intelligence on your competitor, you should ask product development team, your existing SE team, your marketing team, if they have any sort of battle cards that you can use. And then also you want to make sure that any competitive information that you do learn is tied back to pain. Otherwise, it's a so what thing. Like, who cares, right? Like, oh, I do this thing better than my competitor. Okay, fantastic. That's not a pain that I have, so it doesn't matter, right? So those were some of the things that we talked about. John, did you have anything you wanted to bring up from last episode just to hit on again?
My three favorite points competitive intel. I always highlight what we do the same, what we do uniquely different, and what we don't do at all. You highlight those things, you'll know immediately if you have a deal or not.
Yeah, we don't have any listener questions this week, but if you do have a question for us, we're going to try and feature more of those on the show, and we can leave your name out of it if you just tell us in the email, or if your name isn't included in the email. You can send us an email at demogodspod@gmail.com. That is demogodspod@gmail.com. So send your questions there, and we'll answer them for you in a future episode. Tonight's episode, we're talking about sales forecasting, which I know a little bit about, but John is more of the expert, as he is in most of the topics that we cover in here on sales forecasting. And in fact, he was telling me during the break that it's something that he harps on a lot. So if any of your team members are listening to this, I'm sure they're probably rolling their eyes right now as we're discussing sales forecasting. Let's kick this off, John. Tell me what sales forecasting is and why it's important.
You can put this on my tombstone when I'm dead. I promise everyone here. And I say this explicitly with my heart, with conviction and ownership. When it comes to startups, this is applicable to everyone, but specifically when it comes to startups, the inability to accurately forecast is the death of every startup. What does that mean?
Yeah, why is
exactly? when companies, VCs, angel investors, whatever it is, PEs invest in a startup or any company for that point, they're trying to say, if I give you X dollars, you're going to generate Y output. So it's a very meticulous, matter-of-fact statement. If I give you money, you are going to take that money and give me this much more money. That's what forecasting is at the end of the day. If I give you a specific amount of money and you invest that money as you see fit, whether in sales, marketing, engineering, you are going to take my money and give me so much more money on top of what I gave you that it's profitable for me. That's all forecasting is.
So I could understand why if you consistently missed your forecast, right? If your forecast was consistently wildly off. I'm not talking about like I was off by 10, 20%, or whatever is considered I don't even know what the exact numbers would be, right? But
right.
If you're telling investors like, we are forecasting, next quarter that we're going to bring in $15 billion and you bring in $1 million, that's a problem. But I mean, even if you're consistently telling them like, we're going to bring in $10 million this quarter, you tell them that every quarter, and every quarter you bring in $3 million, like they're going to be like, we can't rely on this accurately. And I could understand why investors might shy away from that, because it's like, well, you told me if I gave you this money, I'd get, I could anticipate this sort of return. I feel a little cheated now that this is different.
There you go. Now this is only
point of view.
It's not only applicable to investors. I picked on startups, but this is also stakeholders, right? You invest in big, large, publicly traded organizations like Apple, where they're saying, well, every year after year, we release a new phone and it makes this number of dollars. You missed that.
Yeah, they have sales predictions, sales forecasting.
They have sales predictions. So it's as simple as that, man. And it all breaks down to a very mathematical formula that, in finance, it's very important to understand these predictable revenue. Nobody wants to invest other than the federal government. This is why I don't particularly like Fed SLED. Nobody wants to invest their money expecting to lose. Everybody wants to take something off the top, even if it's, to your point, Keith, I invested $15 billion and I made $1 million. At least I made $1 million. That's better than saying I lost $10 billion of the $15 million you gave me with nothing to show. So, yeah, inability to accurately forecast is the death of any organization, hands down.
Yeah, and I guess it makes much more sense when you explain it that way. Now, you mentioned Apple, and that's a different sort of forecasting than what we're talking about. That's retail sales forecasting. We're talking business to business, longer transaction type sales forecasting, right? Where
correct,
the deals that you're working on specifically, when you report to your manager, you're forecasting your deals in which they're rolling up a forecast of all the other deals, and up the chain it goes, right?
Yep.
Now there's different categories that are used to understand where you're at in the sales process, correct?
Correct.
What are some of those categories, and what do they mean?
Yeah, so we've talked about this a little bit before with different like sales operations tools like Salesforce or HubSpot, tools like that. And what they're doing is they're helping sales teams categorize the deals they have that are trying to drive us to a revenue. So let's maybe look at it this way. Let's say we have a target. Let's say Keith and I have a business called Altar of the Demo Gods. And by the end of the year, we're trying to make it to $1 million. Okay? How are we going to make it to $1 million? We have to have some sort of sales that get us there. And we break that down into different processes and maybe different territories. Maybe one of our opportunities is social media. One of our opportunities is direct sales, right? We're trying to break them down into some way of carving up that $1 million into categories. Once we have those categories defined, we'll call them territories to make it simple. We're saying, how do we track a deal as it goes through a territory? So Keith recently sent me an email. Some lady reached out to us and said, hey, I can produce more money for Altar of the Demo Gods if you engage with me. Now, what I would do is in HubSpot or Salesforce, I would put that into a stage called discovery. Discovery means this is an opportunity for us to work towards that $1 million goal in this specific vertical. If we go start there, go make some phone calls, go meet this person, go figure out what they're about, we can move them through a sales process progression. We move from maybe discovery to maybe proof of concept or a demo, right? Demo next to a proof of concept where we're saying based on this information we learned from this one particular person in this territory, we can now forecast towards our $1 million goal. We can get $250,000 out of this one person. So now we can start tracking along that line. We started out with having one phone call in discovery. We moved to a demo of what we do. We moved to a proof of concept of what we do. And then we're trying to move to a close stage of getting that $250K that helps us get to that $1 million. That's 1/4 of our target, but it's just a way of kind of breaking down what we're trying to do to get to the goal. Does that make sense, Keith? Should I break that down some more?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, we can even kind of analogize it to a golf game. In fact, I know in forecasting, we had a sales leader that would use a metric that he would call closest to the pin, which is, golf term, right? Like,
yeah,
what is the number that we are most likely to hit, right?
Yep.
That was, I forget what that actually meant, but you're gonna have different stages,
Yep.
on a larger course as you go towards your target, which is the flag, right? So you're gonna start with your drive, so that would be the first phase, and then you're going to have your fairway, and hopefully you get it up onto the green. Maybe you have another fairway shot, and then the green, and then you're gonna putt, right?
There you go.
And so you could look at that, if we think in terms of forecasting. When the ball is going to get in the hole, we can go, okay, well, if we're at the driving phase, we still have another 10 minutes till we're at the putting phase, right?
Yeah.
But if we're at the second fairway shot, we may only have 2 minutes until we're at the putting phase. So it gives you an idea of timing when you can split it up into those phases like that.
That's
but I mean,
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, to make it even better, so let's work with my $1 million analogy in your golfing phase here. If you have only one golfer and their goal is 1 million, and overall the target is 1 million, that's kind of a bad situation. So what if we got 3 golfers? And those 3 golfers each try to get to 1 million. Mm-hmm. And let's say those 3 combined can get to 1 million. That's a winning scenario.
Sure.
Right? That's what we're ultimately trying to do, is trying to put it into some way of saying, if we have enough, and it's the rule of thumb, like 3X pipeline. In sales, people will hear this term. You should always have 3X pipeline. If your goal is 1 million, you should be aiming for 3 million as the goal. That means you should be aiming for 9 million as inbound, and that means you should be aiming for 21 million as the overall market, right? So top of funnel, all this is probably going to start making sense to people if they listen to us concurrently over time, but that's what top of funnel means. Like
let's walk. Let's walk through that now in reverse, just to explain it again for the people that missed it, and so you can also understand how the sales process works. And I want you to picture, as John goes through this, a funnel. Right?
Yep.
A funnel that we're getting through. We're funneling people down all the way to a closed deal, right? Yep. So let's start again. So you said the top funnel is going to end up being what, like 9X, right?
Yeah, at least 9X. So we'll say 9X, but I'll go with, like, let's say our goal is 21 million. So top of funnel, I'm looking for like the bottom 1 million is our goal. Top of funnel, 21 million. That means of opportunity. So to Keith's point, stage 1, opportunity. Someone hitting our website, someone calling us, someone just knowing what our brand is. That's the marketing combined with sales. That is top of funnel. So as you progress through that, if somebody came to me and they said, hey, my sales forecast is I have top of funnel based on marketing and market awareness and everything else, 21 million, I should, at a bare minimum, be able to get to 1 million. So to Guy's point, as you progress through, okay, 21 million top of funnel. Did somebody call them? Maybe a BDR. maybe a sales rep, maybe an inbound lead. Can we narrow that down to maybe 18, 15 million? Meaning they took a call. They know who we are. They're not just a Gmail account.
So I may be reversing these terms. So after you come out of top of funnel, you go into what they call a marketing qualified lead. And that's where we feel that you understand enough about our marketing that you could still be, this isn't a guarantee or any point, but you qualify enough to move to the next part of the funnel. You're more likely to buy than other people that are not
correct. Qualified. You're not fake. You're not a robot. You're nothing else. So based on what Keith said,
basically, you don't have a Gmail address. Like you sent in a request with a corporate email address. Maybe you've looked at one or two of our pages and we've determined you're marketing qualified. So we're going to move you on to the next part of the funnel. So we move you down. You're no longer part of that 21 mil. It gets smaller. So let's say it ends up at this point probably being somewhere around 7 mil, right? Because we're going 3x.
That'd be awesome. Hell yeah. Let's go with that. I'm excited right now if I'm forecasting that. And what we're saying is, to Keith's point, call it following this analogy. And again, we're not scientists. I'm not a CRO. Keith's not. You go from wide world, marketing qualified lead. You took some interest. Now there's sales qualifying lead. That means somebody analyzed it and they said, based on some, measurement, some check boxes, some metrics, you're not just marketing. You didn't just click on the link because it was an ad on, YouTube.
Like this is a real, this deal has some teeth to it. Yeah,
it has some teeth. Somebody clicked on this for a very specific reason. And, as far as sales qualifying lead, now it's getting to a sales pipeline. Now, this is where I'm getting interested. This is where forecasting matters. I don't care about wide world. Great. Everybody's clicking on things. I don't care about marketing qualified leads, to be honest. They're awesome. They make good metrics. But when it comes to qualifying real money, where I'm trying to get that target revenue of 1 million, right? This is sales qualifying lead. That's where it starts to get serious. That's where we're saying sales rep, AE plus SE plus BDR. I'm counting on you to refine this opportunity. And again, I'm calling it an opportunity. It depends where you go. But to take this sales qualified lead and turn it into something real, a real prospect. That's exactly what forecasting is.
And I can use past data to know that okay, once somebody becomes a sales qualified lead, the odds of closing a sales qualified lead are whatever percentages. So I can anticipate now and better forecast. Say we're getting close to when I'm anticipated to close deals, and I'm being asked well, how much do you think you're going to make? And that could be 2 or 3 months from now, but how much do you think you're going to make? And if I know statistically that 10% of my sales qualified leads get closed, I can use that as my rough estimate for my forecast. And I have data to back that up. But I can also use the historical timeline of that too. If I know it takes somebody 6 months to go from sales qualified lead to closed, I'm not going to predict something in sales qualified. I'm not going to forecast it being closed in 3 months.
Yeah.
Right.
But
unless the customer's literally told me I have to close this in 3 months, otherwise I won't get it. And even then I'm going to be weary. But
let's do a little bit of role playing, Keith, so I can highlight for anybody listening. Exactly. Right.
You got to keep the relationship fresh, John.
Leather, rubber, latex. I don't know, whatever people wait. Let's do some role playing. So
let's do some role play.
Not exactly that role playing. We're here. So here's what kills me about if reps can learn this, they will be the greatest ever. So let's run through this scenario. Let's say we went through wide world, we got to marketing qualified lead, and now we got sales qualified lead. And we're doing a Friday meeting where, Keith, you're my boss, and you're asking me about this sales qualified lead because your job is to forecast how likely it is for me, the AE, to submit a deal. So just ask me a random question, something like, John, tell me something about this deal and why you think I should put it in my forecast as realistically closable. You're the boss, right? Okay.
So I would probably ask, have you met with them yet? That'd be my first question. Have you personally talked to them, John?
Yeah, no, Keith, but they sent me an email and they're really interested.
Okay. Have you identified any sort of pain?
I don't even know what that means, but they told me they want to buy. They have money right now. They have budget. This is real, Keith. This is a real deal.
Yes. So they have budget, but we don't even know if our solution's right for them.
Keith, they clicked on multiple links. They downloaded multiple white papers. They're serious about buying.
Okay, so let's put this into the MEDDIC framework now, and let's see how real this is, right? Let's see how many boxes we can check and see how real this is.
All
right. So that, like, if you have good sales leadership, not to say that I'd be good sales leadership, but like they're gonna definitely push back on that and be like, "You got the happy ears," unless they have happy.
Only they want to buy, man. The guy sent me an email on Friday.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe he does. Like,
dude, well, he said he has budget.
Why haven't you talked to him yet? Yeah. Why haven't you talked to him yet?
Because I've been doing this for 10 years. Who are you to question me?
All right, I think I get the point. Yeah, I think I get the point.
Now, to your point, let's try it with MEDDIC, though. Let's run it through with MEDDIC with somebody who's open-minded and who's trying to listen to a real sales leader. Let's try it.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know MEDDIC well enough to really role play this. But no, I would start asking. I would start asking questions around like, why us?
Yeah.
What happens if you do nothing? Like, why not do anything? Like, I'm trying to understand who the economic buyer is. Like, do you understand who your coach is, who your economic buyer is? Is there a project around this? Is there executive support within this? Like,
what's all the timeline on this? There's all these things, and that's what we're absolutely trying to highlight, Keith. That's all I'm trying to say. So when it comes to
go back and listen. For our listeners, go back and listen a couple weeks ago, because what we're talking about, like, a lot of this stuff gets solved during the discovery process, and we just did an episode on that not too long ago.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, thank you, Keith, for participating as a sales leader here. Your sales leader is not just trying to get in your ass to like be a jerk. His job, or their job, their job is to forecast based on the data you're giving them. And if you just keep coming back and saying, I just have a good feeling, they say they have money, they say they have budget, this is why we're trying to follow a sales process and put it into something that makes sense to forecast. To Keith's point, number one, do they have real pain? Yes. Can you articulate that pain to the problem we solve? Yes. All right, now I'm leaning in. Now I'm willing to forecast this. Now we start picking it up.
Now it's starting to sound real to me, right? Like when you start telling me things like, yes, they do have budget. I've talked to, the executive buyer, and he's confirmed that they have budget. They have a project that this can be easily part of because it solves these pain points for them. Then in my mind as a sales leader, I'm going, oh, yeah, I can, not only can I forecast this, but I can put, because I've even seen sales forecast, sales leaders everybody has different forecasting methodologies, but I've seen them add like another layer on top of that too, of like how realistic the deal is, for closing may give it, an extra weight in bump there. So it's when you're having those conversations, I get it. Even as an SE, I've had happy years too. The AEs aren't the only ones that are susceptible to it. As a sales engineer, I've definitely gotten happy years before too. That's why it's good to have a third party that, particularly if they haven't been involved at all yet, and they start asking questions and poking holes in your deal, and you can realize like, okay, maybe this isn't as qualified as I thought it was. It doesn't mean it won't be. It just means you got some work to do. That's all.
That's the key, right? So all sales leadership is trying to do is trying to help you get that deal across the line. Nobody's saying you're an idiot because your gut says this is going to happen. I want to put the parts and pieces in place that make sure it happens. So even for an SE in technical sales, we can say we did a demo, they all loved it. Everybody's geeking out. We moved to POC. We did a POC, they all love it. Everybody's geeking out. We checked all the boxes. That doesn't mean the deal's won. There's still aspects of it like, do we understand their buying process? Have we gone through the paperwork? Are we in procurement? Do we know who the buyer is, to Keith's point? Do we know the timeline? Do we know the budgeting? Do we know a preferred partner? A good sales leader is trying to say this deal is in a prime position where I'm going to forecast it because if we do X, Y, Z, if from a company, we have the CEO call them and talk to them. We have our CFO call them and make sure procurement's ready to go. We have our CISO call them, make sure security's in place. we can accurately forecast this deal realistically based on the data we have. That's why forecasting is so damn important. And I'm going to tell you right now, SEs, we kind of get away with murder because we only own maybe 1/9 of the sales op in like Salesforce or HubSpot. We own the technical aspects of it. We maybe coach the AE. Sometimes we have to fill it in ourselves, but we don't own the whole thing. So what we do own, we want to make sure we're accurately detailing those differentiators and all the things we can help support our sales leadership say, this is a real forecastable deal based on these things. We satisfied the technical requirements. We satisfied the requirements. Now we just got to follow the business process. Is there anything we learned along the way? Keith, did you meet somebody who said, hey, we bought software before and here's what we've done? Oh, let's document that, right? So as technical sellers, as SEs, we can complement the AE team in what they're doing, because the last thing you want is your sales leadership to get fired because you forecasted inaccurately. You said, oh man, I just had a gut feel. The POC went well. I feel like it went well. Demo went well. That's not the end of the story, right? That's all we're trying to get across right now.
Yeah. John, it's that time of the evening where we wrap it up and we say goodbye to our wonderful listeners. This has been a good show, good conversation on understanding sales forecasting a little bit better. I think I understood it a little bit better than I gave myself credit for. I'm certainly not a forecasting guru by any stretch of the imagination just yet. Thankful that we have John as the other half of the show to help keep me straight on that. So in short, you're going to start with top of funnel, right, where it's the entire world. It's kind of the entryway into a sales funnel, right? You start with the entire world. It's going to be bajillions of people or whatever number you want to make up for that. And then only a certain percentage of those people are going to be marketing qualified, right? They're going to have a business address. They're going to read 1 or 2 articles or whatever your company has determined scores as a marketing qualified lead. Then only a certain percentage of those people are going to move on to what's known as a sales qualified lead. When they make it that point, that's when they hit the sales funnel, where you're interacting with them. You're doing your discovery to determine if a deal's real or not. With that being said, you're trying to dig up this data, and you're using historical data to make data-driven decisions in your forecast, right? So if I know that historically it takes X amount of time to close a deal at this stage with customers that have whatever data points you found, use that in your forecasting to try and be more accurate. So, data science can certainly help if you have any sort of specialties in that. Or actually, that's one thing that generative AI has been really good at, is data analysis too. So just throw that out there. If you trust handing over your data to an AI system, or the data that you're handing over to the AI system, you may be able to figure out some trends from that. And then what was the last thing I had? Oh, and then just making sure that you're answering important sales questions. Good sales leadership is probably going to ask you a ton of questions. They're not trying to give you a hard time on it or make your day harder. They're trying to understand, is this deal real, right? Trying to get past the happy ears, past the, I'm going to get all my commission. I'm going to hit goal this month because some bluebird just flew in with $1 billion check for me, right? They're making sure that it's real. And making sure that you can answer those really does help with the accuracy of your forecast. John, what do you have to tell our lovely audience from tonight's episode?
Just 2 things, Keith. The inability to accurately forecast is the death of any company. Put that on my tombstone, man. I don't know if there's enough room. I'm going to have to buy a big one. But number 2, I hope everyone listening to this episode who's not in sales understands there's a lot more to selling than just being pretty or handsome, buying people dinners and shaking hands. There's a lot of science that goes behind forecasting and accurately getting a deal to a stage that closes. And, the best sellers and the best sales leadership understand this, they implement this, and they articulate why it's so important to do what we do. So it's not a joke. It's not a game. There's a lot to be had. hopefully they take away some nuggets from this, Keith.
Awesome. John, thanks again for educating me. Hopefully you educated our wonderful listeners. Thanks again for tuning in. If you liked tonight's episode, please make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff that you can do on the interwebs. Get us wherever you get your podcast or on YouTube. But if you're like, Keith, I don't know where to go for podcasts, just give me a link. I just need a link. Go to demogodspod.com. Right at the very top of the page, you'll see a listing of all the different podcast platforms we're on with links right to our show's page on those platforms. Also on the website, you will find blog posts and all things Alter the Demo Gods. If you have questions for us or think you'd make a good guest on the show, you can email us at demogodspod@gmail.com. That's demogodspod@gmail.com. Again, John, thank you for sharing your wisdom. To all of our listeners, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you here next week on Alter of the Demo Gods.